we're all ignoring the elephant in the room. There's an email that says that Donald Trump blew Bubba. Now, some people think Bubba's Bill Clinton. Some people think it's a horse. Some people think whatever.
The most recent episode of Piers Morgan Uncensored was dedicated almost exclusively to the topic of the recent Epstein Files bombshells and the ensuing fallout. And Donald Trump and MAGA suffered their most brutal humiliation on this show yet, and in wildly entertaining fashion. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have a lot to get through here, okay? Several clips to look at. We're going to dive straight in, which is first Piers Morgan pretending to be confused about why Donald Trump flipped his answer on the Epstein Files House vote.
Okay, Cenk, let me start with you. Donald Trump has flipped around on the Epstein Files and their importance, significance, and need to be fully transparent about them for the last few months. I'm trying to scratch my head and work out exactly why, not least because when I interviewed David Boies recently, who was the attorney for Virginia Giuffre and a number of other victims, and also one of the most eminent criminal lawyers in American modern history, he was crystal clear to me that from everything he's seen in the files, there is no suggestion of any criminal culpability for Trump himself. So what is going on here?
Yeah. So first of all, obviously there was things that were embarrassing there for Donald Trump. And, you know, in your intro, you talked about how there isn't anything that says that Donald Trump actually did something illegal. That's true. And that means it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means that we haven't seen the files yet, right?
So there is that component that, of course, Trump would be hella embarrassed by the contents of the files. Somebody as smart as Piers should understand this. So again, it's just, I think it's because he's so desperate to give Trump the benefit of the doubt. Like, oh my God, see, Trump has finally pivoted on this. Let's give him credit. No, Piers, we're not going to do that because it's very transparently, nakedly self-serving. And Cenk at the very end offers yet another reason why Donald Trump has flipped on this.
Well, and why is he giving up now and saying, okay, release the files? Well, number one, he isn't. He could release the files himself right now, so he's lying. He doesn't really want to release the files. And number two, it's because he already lost the vote. So what else is he going to do? He has
Exactly. That's the key part there. Donald Trump waged a private and public extraordinary pressure campaign against Republican defectors to prevent this discharge petition from making its way to the floor and forcing the release of the Epstein files. So to suggest that he has had a principled commitment to releasing the Epstein files, anyone who says or suggests or claims that is full of shit. That's really the heart of the matter. It's embarrassing. Trump tried to prevent it, and then at the end of the day, Thomas Massie and others prevailed over him. They beat him. They beat his ass, and so he's trying to get ahead of it to save face, and Piers is half-heartedly trying to indulge him, but again, it's pretty pathetic, and Cenk shuts it down. Here's another clip.
Epstein and so on. You know, as Cenk pointed out, if what Epstein says in these emails that came out about Trump in the last few days is right, then it appears that Donald Trump may have continued his friendship with Epstein past when he said he did before. So these emails, the sort of the leak emails have been pretty devastating in terms of, you know, apparent evidence contradicting a lot of public statements by a lot of very famous people. But ultimately, to me, what really matters is whether any of this activity was criminal. And I am mindful again of what David Boies said to me, which is he'd seen nothing criminal against Trump, but he had seen stuff against at least 6 and maybe as many as a dozen high-profile men, which he thought warranted criminal prosecution. So this has a long way to go. If this dump comes with all the files released, we could see a flurry of prosecutions against some very famous people.
So, look, real quick, friend of the show, Brian Tyler Cohen's about to weigh in. But again, this is the predicament that Piers finds himself in because he had, well, damn it, if the tranche of Epstein emails that were released totally contradict what Trump claimed. Trump claimed that he ended his association with Epstein long before anybody knew about what Epstein was doing, but there was some evidence to contradict that. Now, the Epstein files or the Epstein emails that were released in which Epstein says, yeah, Trump knew all about the girls. That is further evidence that either Epstein was lying or Trump was lying. And unfortunately for Piers, Trump is the most prolific liar in modern American history, so we have no reason to really give him the benefit of the doubt. Well, let's hear what Brian has to say.
Even if Trump didn't do anything illegal, the reality is that he is the one secreting all of these files, in effect protecting all of these people who may very well have done something illegal. And that's just as bad in my book, whether you are the one committing these crimes or whether you're the one protecting these people who are committing these crimes. And the reality is that Donald Trump had the ability via Pam Bondi, because as we all know, she is an appendage of him, to be able to release these files months ago. And in fact, this wouldn't have been surprising considering this administration is filled with people who staked their entire identities, who predicated their entire brands on this idea that they were going to release the Epstein files on day one. So it's no surprise when you staff your administration with Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and Alina Habba, all of these people who had been beating this drum about releasing these Epstein files, suddenly they hide them. So if somebody did do something illegal and you have somebody who's protecting those people, in my book, that is just as bad. And I want to clarify a point that I heard previously on this panel, this idea that if there was something bad in the Epstein files, that the Biden administration would have just released it. First of all, the Ghislaine Maxwell prosecution was going until 2022, and then her appeal was going until 2025. And in a world prior to this one, where the DOJ is completely politicized and weaponized, they're not going to release information on ongoing prosecutions. But that notwithstanding, look, I do believe that this stuff should have been released, and that falls squarely in the lap of one person, and that's Merrick Garland.
So again, I appreciate Brian bringing this up because he gets into the nitty gritty. This claim that, well, the Biden administration would have leaked it. Well, there were pending investigations, prosecutions, and appeals that would have precluded the release of the Epstein files under the Biden administration, number one. Number two, Merrick Garland is not Pam Bondi. Merrick Garland is morally and ethically superior to Pam Bondi, I would argue, to a fault. I would say that he almost circles all the way back around and did not do his job because he was afraid of the appearance of impropriety by politically prosecuting, or rather prosecuting Donald Trump, that it would look like a political prosecution. And Brian actually brings this up later on in the panel against Michael Knowles. Pam Bondi, who is morally inferior to Merrick Garland, would absolutely not hesitate. But of course, the other thing to point out too is that the Biden administration did not campaign on releasing the Epstein files. So again, sorry, Trump should be held to a different standard. He promised to release the Epstein files. Pam Bondi is the sort of person who would absolutely release the Epstein files if Trump ordered it. Trump could order it and has refused not to. He's ordered the exact opposite. So great case made by Brian here. So at this point, Piers and Michael have an exchange. Michael Knowles of the Daily Wire.
We obviously don't live in that world anymore.
Okay, Michael Knowles, if I was advising Donald Trump here, I would just say, you know what, you should just get ahead of all this. Order all the files to be released, unredacted, just get it all out there because it's all going to come out now. However it happens, it's all going to come out. Yes, there's a process now where the House will vote on it. It's likely to vote in favor of releasing. It goes to the Senate. There'll be enormous pressure on the Senate to authorize the release. And then there may be some stuff that's held back because they'll say, well, we're investigating. But ultimately, I don't think the American public are now going to be appeased until they know that every spit and cough and dotted I is out there. What do you think?
This is what it really comes down to, Piers. There have been lots of interesting things said on this panel. I'm very curious as to what the Epstein infrastructure represented. There have been many suggestions over the years, reportedly from Alex Acosta, the former U.S. attorney who was Trump's labor nominee when he apparently suggested that Epstein belonged to intelligence, the potential connections to Israel, the connection to the UK, obviously with Prince Andrew, whatever. Obviously, it's extremely interesting. I'd like to know more about it. We probably never will know much more about it, but I'm interested in it. Obviously, we want justice for the victims. Obviously, we want bad guys to be held to account. All of that is true, but it's simpler. The reason that President Trump initially in 2015 called for scrutiny into Epstein is because he doesn't have anything serious to hide. Yes, I'm sure he turns up in the files. Yes, I'm sure there's some embarrassing stuff in there, but he's got nothing serious to hide.
And so he goes on to say that actually what Trump did was actually just have a political miscalculation, that he thought that it would go away sooner if he just didn't talk about it and just refused to honor his campaign promise to release the files. Of course, Michael's full of shit. Only a moron would believe that you promise your radicalized base, which is, given over to conspiracy theories, that you would release the files and effectively uncover something that they believe is the biggest conspiracy theory in modern American history. and that the correct thing to do would be to just sweep it under the rug and give them the finger. Michael Knowles is not stupid. He's disingenuous. He's bad faith. Again, he recognizes that he's supporting morally inferior candidates, and so he has to bend his principles over them, but he's not an idiot. It's just, again, the reason that Trump swept the Epstein files under the rug is because he lied to his base and he didn't want to be embarrassed. And so Piers Morgan pushes back in this next clip.
But I think it's much more practical than what everyone's suggesting.
Well, the only thing I would say about your timeline, I'm not saying you're wrong, but if you go back in the last few months, certainly the first months of the year when he got elected, there was this enormous push by his people to say, we're going to release all the files. We're going to be totally transparent. They came on this show and we're giving it the full, we're going to get it all out there, blah, blah, blah. And then a weird series of events happened. Elon Musk falls out with Donald Trump and suddenly tweets out of nowhere, posts out of nowhere on his X platform. Breaking news, Trump's in the Epstein files. That's why he doesn't want to release them. Enjoy your night, Donald, something like that. And within a few days, the whole investigation was shut down. The whole idea of releasing them was shut down. And, I remember looking at all that thinking, that is very odd. What is going on here, right? What has Elon Musk seen or heard? And the fact he set off this bonfire with this one post, which he then deleted later, but it triggered a series of events at the White House that was a screeching U-turn on their previous attitude and tone towards these files. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist, Michael, to think it's all a bit weird.
Putting it mildly, and again, that's where that is the frustrating thing is, again, he's just being a bit too credulous. Piers knows what's going on, which is, again, that the Trump administration and Trump figures lied. And, once they saw that this would be politically inconvenient for Trump or politically damaging for Trump and wouldn't simply, humiliate Democrats, they reneged on their commitment and thus made everything worse. And it's all their fault. And Democrats are blameless in this respect and are right to make fun of and exploit it for political purposes. Which leads me to the final clip. There's so many more clips. We're actually going to break it off and talk about it in a separate video because the subject does change to Marjorie Taylor Greene a little down the road. But this is where the panel really goes off the rails vis-a-vis Trump and the Epstein files. And that is the leaked email from Jeffrey Epstein suggesting that Donald Trump gave President Bill Clinton a blowjob.
And on that, let's stay there for a second. We're all ignoring the elephant in the room. There's an email that says that Donald Trump blew Bubba. Now, some people think Bubba's Bill Clinton. Some people think it's a horse. Some people think whatever. Now, I didn't write the email. In fact, when I first saw it online, I didn't even believe it. And I couldn't believe it's actually true.
Do you believe it now?
Hang on. Just to explain to viewers who might be at the moment shouting at their screen thinking, what? So this is a message reported as originating from Mark Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein's brother. He is the one who sends this to Jeffrey Epstein. He has since publicly denied that it was referring to Bill Clinton, but has offered no clarification as to who it was referring to. Clinton, of course, had that nickname, amongst others. It could just be a joke between brothers. It could just be a slur. Or it could be something else, I guess. I just find it very, very hard.
I have a question, Piers.
What's that?
I have a question for Cenk. I have a question for Cenk. Cenk, do you really believe, forget about Trump for a second, do you think that Trump is Bill Clinton's type? Everything, we know a lot about Bill Clinton's sex life. Do you really think large blonde men, that's Bubba's type? I don't think so.
Yeah. So, guys, this is a classic distraction. That's funny, but I don't know if Bubba's Bill Clinton. I don't care if it's Bill Clinton. I'd be surprised if it was Bill Clinton. But I don't know that he actually blew a guy. I don't know. But
so the point is, though, Trump would find that politically embarrassing, as would many of his party. And again, that's really what it comes down to. But this panel and the entire episode was wildly entertaining. Again, the two MAGA panelists, Michael Knowles and Officer Tatum, routinely debunked and humiliated on a wide variety of points. We'll talk about it in a separate video. Brian really humiliates Michael at one point about Pam Bondi. It's great. And again, the topic turns to Marjorie Taylor Greene. But as far as Donald Trump is concerned, this really is brutally humiliating. Trump is being mocked on this panel as they discuss the rumor that, according to leaked private emails, that Donald Trump may have blown President Clinton or somebody else, some unknown man, in addition to all the other Epstein-related embarrassments that Trump has suffered largely as a consequence of his own stupidity. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.